The PlayStation 2 was Sony's second foray into the home console market. Luckily for them, and for everyone else, not only did it end up becoming one of the best video game systems of all time, but it's also remembered fondly because of its huge catalog of incredible titles. The PS2 constantly saw new releases, from 2000, the year it debuted, up to 2013, when it was finally discontinued. That is the time frame that we'll be using for this list. What's going on, everyone? Geoffrey here, welcome to Game Rant. In this video, I'll be highlighting the best game from every year of the PlayStation 2's extensive console life. So let's hop into the list. First up, for the year 2000, we have Timesplitters. The PS2's launch lineup may not have been perfect, but it had some solid titles in it, like Armored Core 2 or Tekken Tag Tournament. But most people who bought this console on its first day wanted to play one game above everything else: Timesplitters, by the creative minds at Free Radical Design. The developer's previous experience working at Rare paid off because this felt like a worthy successor to titles like GoldenEye 007 or Perfect Dark. A unique shooter with satisfying mechanics, fun time-traveling levels, and an addictive multiplayer component. Next up, for the year 2001, we have Silent Hill 2. In less than a year, the PS2's catalog was already changing the industry with excellent games like Grand Theft Auto 3, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Jak and Daxter. But out of all of them, Konami's Silent Hill 2 was the best title released in all of 2001. The story of James Sunderland's disturbing and depressing journey to Silent Hill was quickly cemented as one of the best video game narratives ever made. The entire titular town has a terrifying atmosphere that makes players feel uneasy, and the intense survival horror gameplay can definitely make anyone feel helpless. It is no wonder and no surprise that Silent Hill 2 is still considered one of the best horror games of all time, let alone on the PS2. Alright, for the year 2002, we have Kingdom Hearts. The Final Fantasy franchise was associated with the PlayStation brand for years, but Square was looking for the next big thing that would attract the attention of an even bigger demographic. That's when they joined forces with Disney in order to create the mind-blowing Kingdom Hearts franchise. The original game was a magical adventure like no other, as Sora, Donald, and Goofy traveled to different worlds based on classic animated movies such as Aladdin, Hercules, and The Little Mermaid. With its beautiful soundtrack, memorable story, and accessible action combat, Kingdom Hearts was the beginning of a legendary new IP that would end up making a huge impact on the PS2. Next up, for 2003, we have Ratchet & Clank Going Commando. Just like its predecessor, the PS2 was popular among kids because it was home to some new and iconic platforming mascots. While Sly Cooper and Jak and Daxter were definitely really great, Ratchet & Clank were definitely the most popular mascots and pretty much became the faces of the entire console, at least for a time. Their second adventure, Ratchet & Clank Going Commando, was a perfect sequel, with more crazy weapons to use, improved controls, better comedic writing, hilarious cutscenes, and timeless cartoon graphics. The first game was definitely good, don't get me wrong, but Ratchet & Clank Going Commando truly paved the way for the future of this franchise. Moving over to 2004, we have Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. The first Metal Gear Solid was a PS1 classic, and its sequel was one of the best games of 2002, but Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater quickly became one of the best video games ever made, as Hideo Kojima and his team took this as an opportunity to create a prequel that told the story of Big Boss, and well, it paid off. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater features an incredible story with deep characters and a lot of twists and turns that will definitely shock players. The stealth gameplay was refined and perfected with some really creative mechanics and innovative boss fights. Add to that some of that classic Hideo Kojima madness, and this was a revolutionary game that every PS2 owner had to own. Heading on over to the year 2005, we have Shadow of the Colossus. 2005 was one of the best years for the PS2, with titles like Resident Evil 4, Devil May Cry 3, Kingdom Hearts 2, and many other incredible titles that were released during that year. But it was up to Sony and their legendary team Ico to deliver what would become one of the most memorable experiences of the entire console. Yeah, you guessed it, Shadow of the Colossus. The concept is definitely simple: defeat 16 enormous colossi in 16 unique and epic boss fights, and each one of them leaves the player feeling goosebumps thanks to their sheer and staggering size. With its incredible soundtrack, unbelievable graphics for the time, and somber atmosphere, Shadow of the Colossus is a masterpiece that proves video games can definitely be art. Alright, and for 2006 we have Okami. The PlayStation 3 was released in late November 2006, but this wasn't really an issue for PS2 owners, since that console still had amazing games released on it throughout the year. And surprisingly, Okami would end up looking way better than the PS3 had to offer at that time, thanks to its timeless watercolor-styled graphics. Okami perfectly encapsulates the feeling of playing firsthand through a classic Japanese folklore legend, as players control the goddess Amaterasu on her journey to defeat the evil Orochi. This meant they'd have to explore a vast open world filled to the brim with fun side quests and charming characters. Not to mention that it featured the creative celestial brush mechanic that made everything even more fun. Heading over to 2007, we have God of War 2. Fans were perplexed when a first-party sequel to one of Sony's most popular IPs was released for the PS2 in 2007, even if the PS3 had already been on the market for months at that point. This was the case with God of War 2, and it demonstrated that Sony still believed in their console. This sequel improved on everything that was so great about the first God of War, namely bigger bosses, bigger levels, more deadly weapons for Kratos to use, and a deeper storyline, but it still kept the energetic combat system that made this franchise so beloved in the first place. In 2007, PlayStation fans were having a better time with their PS2s than with their PS3s. Next up for the year 2008, we have Persona 4. The PS2 was certainly slowing down by 2008, but it still saw the release of an unexpected exclusive in the form of Persona 4 by Atlus. This was an excellent JRPG with a solid art style that was a huge hit among fans of the genre, and it solidified the PS2 as a console worth owning in 2008. Persona 4 really stood out among other games in the genre with a colorful art style, catchy music, and a mysterious plot that seemed to take advantage of its supernatural elements. The cast of characters is likable and memorable, and the turn-based combat perfected the formula of the series. This is a long game that most players don't mind spending tons and tons of hours in. Okay, for 2009, we have Secret Agent Clank. In the latter stages of its life cycle, the PS2 was kept relevant because Sony ported numerous PlayStation portable games to the home console since they shared similar hardware, and it was a good way of letting players choose how to play their favorite handheld experiences. And Secret Agent Clank was one of the chosen titles. The Ratchet & Clank IP once again showed how vital it was to the PS2, with a really entertaining spin-off starring Ratchet's loyal robot companion, Clank, and a funny parody of the James Bond franchise. It may not be the best game in the series, certainly, but it has some great moments, and it was great to see a solid first-party game still being released on the PS2. Heading over to 2010, we have Silent Hill Shattered Memories. The PS2 also had similar hardware to the Nintendo Wii, so many companies felt it was worth porting some of their games to Sony's last-gen console, even as late as 2010. Konami was one of them when they released a PS2 port of Silent Hill Shattered Memories. This is a bizarre reimagining of the first game, and while it's nowhere near the quality of Silent Hill 2, it still has some really refreshing ideas that shocked players who didn't know what to expect from this franchise. The best part is that most people found the PS2 version to be superior since it wasn't brought down by frustrating motion controls. Okay, and for this we have 2011, 2012, and 2013 with FIFA 12, FIFA 13, and FIFA 14. Now, during its final years, the PS2 was seen mostly as a machine to play sports simulation games and nothing else really, since that it was the only genre that was still released on it, at least as far as new games go. There were the usual suspects like Pro Evolution Soccer, NBA 2K, or MLB, but the FIFA games were pretty much the main reason the PS2 survived up until 2013. FIFA 12, FIFA 13, and FIFA 14 were perfect for any football fan at the time since they could experience a faithful recreation of their favorite sport without the need to buy a next-gen console. These games received fairly positive reviews and sold well, even on the PS2. This may not have been the best way to end the life cycle of such an important console, but the fact that the PS2 was kept alive for more than 13 years is a giant accomplishment in and of itself. And there we have it, everyone, the best PS2 game from every year of the console's life. Thank you so much for watching this video from Game Rant. Be sure to check out all sorts of other top-notch gaming content, including more lists, news, reviews, guides, originals, and so much more right here on Game Rant. Have a truly wonderful and happy day, everyone. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.